and talk about all the trades. We're gonna first go over the selections that were made, then talk a little bit about trades that were made, because there were some that were a little questionable, in my opinion. And after that, we're going to talk about team by team, how each team did. And at the very end, I'll kind of talk about who I believe was picked too late, too early, and what teams kind of walk away from the draft last night, winners and losers. Before we get officially started here, again, subscribe to the channel if you like, hearing about the NBA from me, and like the video, subscribe, comment. Feel free to enter the chat, as we're going to have a long stream right now, and let's just hop into it. Okay, so Pistons were out first. They took Cade Cunningham. We'll kind of speed through this, as there's, we'll expound on more things when we can. So Cade Cunningham goes number 1, no surprise. Jalen Green, 2 to the Rockets. Some question it could have been Mobley. Jalen Green goes number 2 to the Rockets. Cavaliers then select Evan Mobley. Raptors take Scotty Barnes. Magic select Jalen Suggs. Josh Giddey is selected at number 6. Jonathan Kuminga, Franz Wagner, Davion Mitchell, Zaire Williams, James Bouknight. The Spurs draft Josh Primo, Chris Duarte. Warriors select Moses Moody. Wizards select Corey Kispert. Thunder draft Alperen Sengun, but then he was later traded to the Rockets. Grizzlies select Trey Murphy, but he's going to New Orleans. Thunder select Trey Mann. Knicks take Kai Jones, who is later traded to the Hornets. Hawks select Jalen Johnson. In the order, and then right now we're at 21 with New York. Keon Johnson goes. Lakers select Isaiah Jackson. Rockets select Usman Garuba. Then Josh Christopher. Clippers draft Quentin Grimes and send him to New York. Nuggets select Nishan Highland. Nets take Cameron Thomas. 76ers take Jaden Springer. Suns select Aaron Sharp, and then he's later traded to the Nets. And then the Jazz select Santi Aldama, who's later traded to the Grizzlies. So that's just the first round. Let's first, let's go and just talk about some trades that happened on draft night. We will make a separate video for the Westbrook trade, and kind of go over that at length a little bit more. But let's start with the first kind of official trade that happened last night, which was the Landry Shamet to Phoenix trade. Brooklyn sends Landry Shamet to Phoenix, and in return the Nets receive Javon Carter and a 2021 first round pick, which turns into Day'Ron Sharpe. So the Nets basically are saying, what can they kind of get low salary? Can they get low salary guys on the roster, because their big three is making so much money along with Joe Harris? So they're basically saying, we'll sacrifice a piece that's kind of a bench piece for us to get 2 more bench pieces for us at a cheaper tag, at a cheaper price tag. So ultimately, I like that one. I think the Suns get another solid bench player for them, along with the Nets getting some solid depth at their end on their side. The next one that we had was the Ricky Rubio trade going to Cleveland. So the Cavaliers send Ricky Rubio and a 2022 pick, second round pick from Washington, and cash to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Taurean Prince and a trade exception. So the one thing I'm looking at here with Ricky Rubio is just, it doesn't really make too much sense to me why Cleveland would trade for a guy like that. Obviously they have some cap space, but this kind of points to Colin Sexton leaving, and them potentially nearing a deal to move Colin Sexton. So I understand that. They kind of swap relatively bad contracts. I think I'd probably want a Taurean Prince on my team more than a Ricky Rubio, but they get a second round pick out of it. Kind of a questionable deal, in all honesty, for both teams. Again, both of them are expiring contracts, so you don't make the world of it too much. But essentially, again, Cleveland, I think Taurean Prince is making a little less than Rubio is. or I think it's actually a lot less. But regardless, Minnesota wants to try to bring their payroll down, so they do that. They get Rubio off their books, get a second round, give up a second round pick, I should say, in order to do so, and then get a trade exception on their side. So they're desperate to kind of move off of some money, and they did that with Rubio. Cavaliers, I guess, want Rubio. Not quite sure how that he fits there, but it is what it is. We'll talk a little bit more about these trades coming up, but the ones that had players in them are the ones that we're actually going to focus on, current NBA players as opposed to drafted players. The next trade that happened was the Utah Jazz sending Derek Favors to the Oklahoma City Thunder for a future second, and the Thunder will also receive a future first round pick from the Jazz. So this one is we all understand that the Jazz are in a situation where they have a huge number on their payroll for their team. They want to try to bring back Mike Conley, and so to them, they basically are saying here, again, we're shedding some salary. If you watch our Utah Jazz offseason preview video, you understand why they're moving off of the money. Again, it's to make room for the contract that they're going to give Conley. Mark Stein reported that the Jazz are currently looking at a 3-year, $75 million deal with Conley. And so, it is what it is, and they have to have some kind of casualty, a money casualty, in order to make that happen. So ultimately, Jazz make a solid move. Now, I personally would prefer them to maybe not have to trade a first round pick in order to get off the Favors money, but again, you're going to have to sweeten a deal, because I don't think a team is going to take Derek Favors just for nothing. So Jazz, ultimately, you look and you say, well, why do they give up Favors? Again, trying to make the money work to bring back Conley. He's the priority. They believe it's a high enough a priority for them they can sacrifice a future first, and then Thunder essentially just get another pick for the future. So both teams, that's kind of the process, the thinking process for both of those teams. And then that is it. Again, we will talk about the Lakers Wizards trade in a separate video. And let's move on. We're gonna talk team by team now, and we're gonna kind of go through every single team in the draft and kind of what they did, and kind of give some initial thoughts and feelings. We're also going to throw some timestamps in here, so people can hop around the video if they like, and go from there. So let's start with Atlanta. So Atlanta, I loved what Atlanta did. Atlanta has Jalen Johnson, in my opinion, fall to them at 20. Versatile guard from Duke, or I should say forward. I think they put him as a guard, but I think he's more of a guy who can play the 3 or the 4. Ultimately, he's a guy I think is a solid contributor to the team. I see that he's a guy who is who can score. He's an athlete, kind of has an NBA body already, and so ultimately, good pick for them. They also select Sharif Cooper, who I just don't understand how he dropped to 48, and they didn't even have to trade anything to get him. So they get 2 really good guys that I personally was high on. I think Atlanta does a tremendous job with what they had, and again, playoff team doing the right things in the draft. It's always a good sign of good front office management. Celtics, won't talk too much about them. They select Johan Bergen from Paris. Again, guard, 45th pick. I don't know, how much we can talk about this really. Celtics obviously made the trade with the Thunder to get rid of their pick that was, I believe, 18 in the Al Horford Kemba Walker trade. So they didn't have a first round selection. They select a guy who is most likely a project and may or may not come to the NBA ever. But again, they did what they needed to do with their first round pick and went from there. So Boston did that. Brooklyn Nets. So the Nets had an interesting draft again because so much money is tied up to the big 3, to Kevin Durant, to James Harden, to Kyrie Irving, and Joe Harris. They don't really have a whole lot of money that they can go buy guys in free agency. There will be veterans that will take the minimum to go there, and they could potentially get a guy on the mid-level exception. But ultimately, I don't, they needed kind of bodies on the bench. I think that's one thing that we saw in the playoffs, is that they were really just devoid of some talent on their, as far as their depth goes, which again makes sense. If you're gonna have 3 superstars, you got to sacrifice some of your bench, but they're trying to get more young pieces that they can at least play and have just a minor role for just a few minutes during games. Cameron Thomas they selected. In the trade of the Landry Shamet deal, they end up getting Day'Ron Sharpe as well. 2 solid guys. I wasn't super high on Cameron Thomas, but again, I think if he has a role in the NBA and he goes to a good team like the Nets, now if he went to a bad team that didn't make the playoffs and is not really on that pathway to make the playoffs, then I would worry about that pick. But a guy who lands in a good organization, has talent, he's not going to be asked to do certain things that he would be on like a very losing team. So yeah, Cameron Thomas is a solid pick there. Kessler Edwards, Marcus Zagorowski from Creighton, and Raekwon Gray. I like Raekwon Gray. He's a guy I mentioned in the video. I talked about some potential second round guys. I didn't think he would drop to 59, but I do think he provides some upside. Again, we're talking about guys who probably will never, as far as the second round goes, most of them will probably never average more than like 20 minutes a game, at least in these first initial seasons in the NBA. So Raekwon Gray is a guy I actually, liked out of Florida State. I think Brooklyn did a solid job with their draft last night. Charlotte. So this is the first team that I'll talk about that I actually do have a kind of a little bit of an issue with. They take James Bouknight at 11. There was a lot of rumors about teams trying to move up to Bouknight. There was like that rumor saying that the Thunder might take Bouknight, but then in reality, again, so many smoke screens go on during the draft. So Bouknight is not the selection for the Thunder. They rather go to Josh Giddey. Bouknight then falls to 11. And again, I think some people say he fell to 11. I think he was taken 5-8 spots too early. I talked about in the 5 guys that I think are high risk. Bouknight's one of those guys. I'm not crazy about him. I think he's got good size. I don't know what his role is. Does this potentially mean that they're moving off of Malik Monk now because they have another shooting guard who, can take up minutes for that position? I don't know. And then 2 late second round picks were also selected in Scotty Lewis and Balza Koprivica from Florida State. They also selected and acquired, and this is kind of where I kind of really have a big problem with the Hornets. James Bouknight is one thing, but when you do what they did here, it really confuses me. So let's start with the least egregious thing I think they did. So they agreed in principle to acquire JT Thor from Detroit in exchange for the 57th pick. Now, this was a trade that we actually didn't talk about. It was the Mason Plumlee trade. Mason Plumlee goes to Charlotte for the 57th pick, and then also Detroit was also giving up Plumlee along with the 37th pick, which turns into JT Thor. JT Thor, I kind of, he's okay. I definitely didn't think he was a first round talent kind of a guy. So landing at 37, that's okay. Again, just okay. I don't think there's too much there. He could probably turn into, I think sometimes when I watched him, I thought he was like Thon Maker like, and Thon Maker is not really doing anything in the league. I think he's out of the league. So little there. Okay. But again, I think, and they took some money to bring in Mason Plumlee. Okay. That's all right, I guess. But let's talk about the Kai Jones thing. So I did not like Kai Jones. Kai Jones actually didn't even make kind of my high risk players list. But because I just think people should know that he's not as good to be selected, not good enough to be selected at 19. So Kai Jones goes, they acquire him from New York because the Knicks had the 19th pick, and they exchange that for a future first round pick. So they basically are saying, we'll give up a future pick for this Kai Jones because obviously you believe in him. When you do that kind of a move, you believe that Kai Jones is a valuable piece to the roster. So I kind of got a little confused with that move. I don't understand why you're trading a future pick for this guy. If you want to do it for a different guy, cool. But this guy, Kai Jones, I don't, a center, when you just traded for a center in Plumlee, doesn't really make too much sense. It seems like they don't really have an idea of what they're going to do to be able to bring in a center. I talked about when I did the Hornets offseason breakdown that they could maybe look at, Nerlens Noel, Andre Drummond. I know those aren't sexy names, but there is a potential of maybe trying to get Miles Turner from Indiana. So I don't know. I thought that was a little questionable. I'm not too impressed by what the Charlotte Hornets did. I typically am not impressed with the Charlotte Hornets do. It seems like they're just not. They kind of take that prototypical like dude that was a good college player or played for a team that is well known in college. So they'll draft guys from Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, even though it doesn't really make sense for them. That's kind of just what Charlotte does. I'm not in favor of what they did in the draft last night. Chicago Bulls, really quick. Again, I'm not going to give them a grade, but again, that trade that they did with Orlando where they gave up the 8th pick, which ended up being Franz Wagner, who I'll talk about later. I think the Bulls probably could have used a guy like that at 8. But again, they do get the All-Star and Vucevic. So, kind of a give or take there. But ultimately, Chicago lands the home, kind of the home guy or the guy everybody knows in Illinois in Ayo Dosunmu. Dosunmu's okay. I used to be really high on him and then I kind of dropped him. I just don't know exactly what kind of role he plays in the NBA. Not really a shooter. He's a pretty solid defender, not a great defender. And I just don't know, is this the point guard move that they're trying to make or something? I don't know what Chicago does with this pick, but again, it's 38th. It's not like I'm going to, really bag on them for making a selection there and make too much of it. Cleveland selects Evan Mobley at number 3. So obviously there's the Jared Allen situation in with his restricted free agency. I do think that I do ultimately think that they'll try to re-sign Jared Allen, and maybe Evan Mobley can be moved to the 4. There, I believe it was Chad Ford talked about how Evan Mobley could even play the 3, in his own opinion. So we're talking about a 7-footer who does have length and who can play on the perimeter. Obviously, a great shot blocker and rim protector. But I ultimately actually like the pick for Cleveland. I think he's a solid pick there. I think they could have traded down to a team that wanted Mobley, but apparently their asking price is way too much. So they stick with the pick, and it's Evan Mobley. Good pick for Cleveland. They didn't have any other selections in last night's draft. Dallas, nothing. Nothing from Dallas, unfortunately. I really, again, really quick thought on Dallas. I really worry about where this team is going. I worry a little bit about Luka. I worry to a degree about kind of how they're going to build around Luka. I just don't know if they have much flexibility with their cap situation. I don't think they have any too appealing trade pieces to teams. So what can they do to build around Luka? I don't know. And if DeRozan really wants to go take less money to go play somewhere else, okay, then go do that. But obviously Dallas is going to be upset with that. Denver, Nah'Shon Hyland at number 26. I like Hyland. A lot of people liked Hyland. I remember there was a game, I think it was in their conference championship game against St. Bonaventure, I believe. I remember watching that game, and Nah'Shon Hyland actually had a really poor game to start off. We got into foul trouble, but there were so many times when I was watching him, and this is kind of non-basketball related stuff, but he was a good teammate. Consistently, it seemed like he was the smartest dude on his team, and it also looked like he was consistently putting guys into position to kind of be a leader. He's a leader for sure. I like Nah'Shon Hyland. If he can improve his jump shot a little bit, I think that would be good. Solid pick for Denver. Solid player. Probably could have been taken a little higher, but a solid selection by Denver, who does have a good history with making some good draft picks. Detroit. Let's talk about Detroit because, okay, I'm not crazy about what they did, to be honest with you. Obviously they got Cade Cunningham, and I think Cade Cunningham is the best player in the draft. Totally agree. Again, I'm not going to make a huge deal about Livers or Garza, but they do kind of seem like wasted picks to me. Livers is like, is there a reason why you're doing it? Like, is it just because he's from Michigan? Is that the big thing? Like, the attraction there? I didn't really think Livers was a guy who was even going to get drafted. Don't really see too much upside there. Luka Garza, I don't even want to get started on Luka Garza. I don't think the guy is going to make it in the league. I just think on defense he is just so slow and so bad, and I just don't know if there's anything there. He did kind of improve his jump shot in his last season at Iowa, but I don't see that translating to the NBA at like a good degree to keep him on a roster, honestly. So talking about G League guys there, but I think maybe you could have picked somebody. Again, Sharif Cooper was available. So, you know, my problem isn't so much with who they selected. It is a little bit with who they selected, but it also is like who they didn't select as well. They also traded that Thor pick, 37. This was a part of that Pistons Hornets deal around Mason Plumlee, and they have Balsa Cabricia at 57. Again, not going to make too much of a big deal of that, but Detroit kind of gets a meh from me during last night's draft. The Warriors. So if it wasn't for the Moody pick, I'd be probably really down on them. I like Moody. This is the range where I liked Moses Moody. I didn't like seeing him at like 6 or 5 or 7. So I'm a little bit okay with that. Kuminga is the really interesting pick here. I was really shocked to see that they took Kuminga at number 7. I thought Kuminga was probably a guy who was at the end of the lottery to the beginning to the mid-teens. So I don't understand the logic of taking Kuminga. He was really, really bad offensively in as far as kind of his analytics show in the G League. You know, there is some potential there. I worry about some shot selection with Kuminga. And to me, is this the Warriors basically saying we're going to try to take 2 high ceiling guys and then maybe look to move them later? I don't know, but wasn't crazy about the Warriors selections. Moses Moody is solid. I like him better at 14 than at 7, but the Kuminga pick kind of pushes, you know, things down for me. Ultimately, it's a okay draft, but if you're a Warriors fan, you definitely wanted to see them move those picks for a veteran player. They just couldn't get it done. Houston is up next. Houston was able to select Jalen Green, number 2 overall. They were also able to get Usman Garuba and Josh Christopher, along with Alperen Sengun, that they traded 2 future first-round picks. One was via Detroit, the other via Washington. This is a really solid, really solid draft. Now, I do worry about the Sengun pick because you had to give up 2 future firsts for Sengun. So that is a little weird. Like, why wouldn't you move 23 and 24 and maybe another first to get Sengun? I don't know. Maybe we'll look back on this and it's, you know, it was the right move, but I would have to look at the protections on the Detroit and Washington selections for those the picks that they traded. But ultimately, I think Houston actually did a really good job. Jalen Green, I think, is the next best player in the draft after Cade Cunningham. And look, if you want to say that he is the best player in the draft, cool. I actually have no problem with that. Yeah, so ultimately, Green's a solid pick. Garuba, maybe a little too high for my personal opinion. Christopher, maybe a little too high for my personal opinion. But again, because they have so much youth on the team, it's not. I feel like these guys can kind of find their way a little bit better, as opposed to like if they're asked to do a certain thing. Garuba, horrible offensively. You look at his offensive numbers, just terrible. I think his effective field goal percentage was like less than 42%, which is awful. But he plays good defense. So maybe you can kind of mix and match players that, you know, low defensive upside but high offensive upside, and vice versa, and things like that. Sengun, I really liked. I thought he should go top 10. So for them to be able to get him at 16 in the trade with Oklahoma City, absolutely great. And Oklahoma City was able to get 2 more first round picks from it. We'll talk about Oklahoma City in a minute. All right, so next kind of tier here. Again, if you are listening for the first time, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to comment on the video. Tell me what you think. Again, I will be putting timestamps on the video, so feel free to kind of jump around to wherever your team is at or whatever you want to hear for this kind of extra long stream that we're doing. Let's see here. So Indiana is next. So the Pacers selected Chris Duarte. Sandro Muliashvili, I believe. Let me in fact, I want to check him out real quick because I actually kind of like him. But let me look. Yeah, okay. And then Georgios Kalastikias, I don't know, Greece dude. They also were able to acquire Isaiah Jackson and Isaiah Todd. Todd was later traded to Washington, December deal. So yeah, so they were able to get Isaiah Jackson as well. So Chris Duarte, there was a lot of hype during the draft that the Knicks really wanted him, but then it kind of cooled off and it didn't sound like any teams were going to be able to trade into like the top 10 or anything like that. So nothing happened there, but Chris Duarte goes to 13 to the Pacers. I think it's okay. I think, again, there's other guys that I would have preferred them to select that were still on the board. Flipping through this thing, Alperen Sengun was still available. Moses Moody was still available. Keon Johnson, Jalen Johnson. These were guys who were still available on the board, and they kind of went in a different way with Duarte. Okay, that's all right, I guess, but I wasn't crazy about it. Sandro Mamuelashvili, I don't know how to say his name, from the big from Seton Hall. He actually was interesting. I watched some of his games, and he actually has some versatility to him. Can pass, rebound. He's kind of athletic. He's a big dude, big athletic NBA body. So interesting, but he's kind of older, so you wonder exactly how he's gonna, what his ceiling is, and then you also wonder, kind of what exactly is he going to be on defense, because he was not a defensive dude at all. Isaiah Jackson, solid pick for Isaiah Jackson. So an okay draft from Indiana. If they would have changed the Duarte pick to somebody else, Jalen Johnson, Keon Johnson, then I probably would have given them a little bit of a higher kind of personal grade. But for me, I don't really see the Duarte pick, and it doesn't make too much sense to me there. Let's see here. Quentin Grimes for the Clippers, who is later traded to New York. Let me talk about the Clippers. So the Clippers, what an absolute great draft for them. They're one of the guys, or one of the teams that I really thought walked away from the draft really solid. So again, they're in a similar cap situation, not quite as severe as Brooklyn, but they have so much money going to Kawhi and PG, and Kawhi may not even play this year. They do have money tied up in other guys like Serge Ibaka, like Luke Kennard and Marcus Morris. So they have there's a lot of money going there, and they still want to try to bring guys back like Batum, like Reggie Jackson, but they understand that they don't have all the money in the world, so they're trying to get some young, cheap pieces, and they were able to do that in the draft. They were able to trade Keon Johnson at 21, or trade for Keon Johnson at 21, and give up Quentin Grimes and a second to get Keon Johnson. That's a fantastic trade. Quentin Grimes, I didn't even have him in the first round, and I think I had him in the second half of the second round. I wasn't too high on him. But Keon Johnson, I actually, if you watched my 5 risky players, he actually was on there. But him going at 21 makes a huge difference. 7 spots is a huge difference. If a guy's taken at the end of the lottery, that's kind of where I wanted him to go. I saw some mocks earlier on during the kind of draft process where he was going at 6 and 7 and 8, very similar to Moses Moody. And I thought he was probably a late lottery guy, but for him to go to 21, super good value. I think he, can grow as an offensive player. Already a solid defensive player, super athletic, and I like him for the Clippers. And then they were also able to get Jason Preston from Ohio, and I love Preston. Again, if you watch my videos, you'll know. Second round, my 5 guys that I liked in the second round. One of them was Jason Preston. The other one was, there's obviously 4 others, but Preston was the one guy that I really liked out of Ohio. Now, he might be a defensive liability, probably will be a defensive liability in the NBA, but I think there is some, at his ceiling, he might be like a guy similar to Cam Payne, not super athletic, but knows how to play, can get streaky, can shoot a little bit, But again, the defense and the athleticism is in question, but I still like Preston for that selection for the Clippers. On to the Los Angeles Lakers. This one's a quick note. Again, we will talk about the Westbrook trade in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. That will be made after this stream is done. Lakers are sending this Isaiah Jackson pick somewhere else. I think it's going to Washington, which then got dealt to Indiana, I believe. But the Lakers made their trade to get Westbrook. We will talk about that in another video. The Memphis Grizzlies. So they were able to select... pull him up. They were able to select Zaire Williams from Stanford. A little high for me. A little high, but taking into consideration that they were able to, get a top 10 pick in the first place from that Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, Jonas Valanciunas deal. Given that, I'm a little okay with it. Could you have gotten him at 17? Maybe, but maybe they knew somebody in between 11 and 16 was going to select him. So for them to get their guy, I don't have a problem with that. I'm not crazy about Zaire Williams, but again, he's also a dude that I think could learn with the Grizzlies. It's a young team, and provides a guy with definitely pretty high upside, but I just don't know if he's going to reach it. Still an okay pick. What I really liked from them too is that they were able to get BJ Boston late into the second round. BJ Boston was a guy I actually had at the end of the first out of Kentucky. I think he has some skills. His efficiency in college was really bad, but I think there is some things that maybe if you can coach him up right, they're good. To get him at 51, unbelievable in my opinion. And then they also were able to trade with the Utah Jazz. They were able to get Santi Aldama, who's a big. I didn't know if he was really going to be a first round guy, but he was, and okay, a pretty solid draft for Memphis, to be honest. I wasn't super impressed, but I also wasn't like super disappointed in what they did. And again, they did kind of give up a little bit. I think maybe that's a little bit too much to give up for Aldama. We're talking about the 40th pick and 2 future seconds to the Jazz. So okay, not great. Miami Heat, they didn't have any selections last night. I don't know where their picks are, but I believe I think their pick would have been one of the Rockets picks. I think maybe not 100% sure. Probably, I'm guessing. So anyway, yeah, Miami. Nothing from them. Milwaukee Bucks were able to get 2. Let's see here. So they like Milwaukee had Isaiah Todd. I don't know what's happening with Isaiah Todd. I think Isaiah Todd officially is in Washington, but took a lot of time to get there. So they actually were able to get Sandro Mamuelashvili and Georgios Kalaitsikas, 54 and 60th picks. Again, projects, and they also got 2 second rounders from Indiana in exchange for Isaiah Todd. So I actually like, again, I've talked about Mamuelashvili, whatever you want to call him, the big from Seton Hall. I actually liked him. So again, pretty solid. Nothing too drastic for the NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks. So no, not much to report here, but a solid trade that gets you future picks in the future. Minnesota. This is my annual dump on Minnesota time. Why did you give up your pick for D'Angelo Russell? And you traded away Andrew Wiggins. Like, not going to get into it, but Minnesota, one of the worst front offices, in my opinion, in the league. New Orleans Pelicans. Let's go to New Orleans. So New Orleans was able to get... let's see here. So they had I believe their only selection that stuck with them was Herb Jones. They also got Trey Murphy. So Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, yes. Those are actually really solid picks. Those are 2 guys that I actually had in my kind of the hidden gems. So for them to get both of them, and then one of them was, Trey Murphy, maybe a little bit of a reach at 17, tiny bit. But then Herb Jones at 35, a little bit of a, what's the opposite of a reach? I don't know. A steal. I like Herbert Jones and I like Trey Murphy. I think they're solid dudes that have roles in the NBA. And for them to go to a team that already has like guys who are established in their roles, like Ingram and Zion, and with the new player in Valanciunas, I think it's a solid picks from New Orleans. I actually should have put them. I forgot to put them to be a part of my winners group, but I just want to make it clear. I think they are a winner of the NBA draft. One of the winners of the NBA draft. Conversely, let's talk about the Knicks. I don't understand what the Knicks are doing. So they traded away Kai Jones and they got a first round pick. Awesome. From Charlotte. Good job. Good. That's a good move right there. Kai Jones, I don't think was worth 19, and for you to get a future pick from it, super solid. Trade away a future pick where like your guy isn't available. We heard all the rumors about how they wanted to get Duarte, maybe another guard or something like that. And instead they get Kai Jones, but then they move him off to get a future first. That's a tremendous move. Keon Johnson. I don't understand this one either. So all they got was a future second round pick from the Clippers and Quentin Grimes for a guy who I think should have gone in the lottery. Some people think should have gone top 10. I don't understand that one from the Knicks at all. Like I need to hear the logic on that. I really don't understand why you wouldn't take Keon Johnson at 21 and then you just trade him for two second round values. Because again, I don't value Quentin Grimes as a number 25 pick in a draft. So weird move by the Knicks. They actually also were on my losers list, but they're not going to appear later in the video. So yeah, officially, I don't think the Knicks did good in their draft. They later traded Jeremiah Robinson Earl to, I believe, to Oklahoma City, and then they got Rokas Jurubis and Miles McBride. Hey, Miles McBride, solid selection, very solid. But I ultimately just am a little unimpressed by what they did. Otherwise, I give them like kind of a B. So maybe they're not fully a loser because they did make that Kai Jones trade, but then that Keon Johnson one was weird. And then they did get, Miles McBride. So up and down for the Knicks, but what else is new with them? Oklahoma City Thunder. Let's talk about the team that I think just absolutely had a field day with the NBA draft. So they select Josh Giddey at 6. Some people are going to think this is a reach. I think it's okay. Maybe he could have gone at like 8 or 9. Like maybe that's where I had him. But I think he's a talented dude. They obviously are high on him. They went and got him. Again, there was the smoke screen apparently that they were looking at James Bouknight, but I love Giddey a lot more. Then they drafted Sengun and traded him to Houston for 2 future first round picks via Detroit and Houston. Detroit and Washington. I believe one of those Washington picks comes from the Westbrook deal, and then I'm not sure what the Detroit pick is for Houston. But man, oh man, to get 2 futures for Alperen Sengun, who again, I think he's a very popular guy that people kind of like. That was kind of maybe a little relative sleeper in the draft. But again, sometimes they're sleepers for a reason. And I like Sengun, but if he doesn't work out, you just got yourself 2 future firsts. I don't think Sengun is worth 2 future firsts. I think maybe the first couple guys in the draft are worth getting 2 future firsts from teams, but not Sengun. So I think Oklahoma City did an absolutely great job by getting 2 picks for Alperen Sengun. They then selected Trey Mann, who I think maybe was taken a little tiny bit early, but nothing too drastic and too horrible for Oklahoma on this one. He's a solid guard. I think he can play. I believe he's a good shooter. Solid pick. Just a solid pick. I like him a lot. Miles McBride was later selected by the Thunder, but then traded to New York along with Jokovic. And then they later selected Aaron Wiggins at 56. So Oklahoma City, again, getting picks, getting their guys in Giddey and Mann. Unbelievably good. I think a really good draft from the Thunder. Okay, last 10 teams here. Let's go. Again, right after this, we will transition and we'll talk about guys who I thought were picked too late, and talk a little bit more about them, and then we'll talk about the winners and losers of the draft last night. I've talked a little bit more about them, but I'll talk about them a little bit more at length in the next portion of the stream. Again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment, tell me where I'm wrong, tell me what guys you liked, what your guys' opinions are, and we'll go from there. So Orlando. How about Orlando? So they were I didn't ever envision, I always thought like Suggs was going to go 4. Like I thought that was kind of just, in fact, like there was like a video of the cameraman at the draft last night. Like he was focusing on Jalen Suggs when the Raptors were picking, but then it ended up being Scotty Barnes. So that was a little weird because everyone thought Suggs was going to be the perfect pick. Hey, you lose Lowry, you get a new point guard of the future with Jalen Suggs. Raptors didn't see it that way. He drops to 5 and the Orlando Magic get him. Great. Now, I do wonder exactly, like, these two guys played the same position, right? Fultz and Cole Anthony. Suggs also kind of plays the point too. And not only that, I think all 3 of them too can also play off the ball. So it's kind of a weird backcourt situation. That is also not before, or that's also before even before mentioning RJ Hampton. So a little crowded backcourt there in Orlando, but I think it's the right pick. Best player on the board. Speaking about best player on the board, at 8, Franz Wagner. Wow. I love this pick. I love, and again, this is where I just roast Chicago and I say, why did you trade away your 8th pick? Again, I understand you gave Vucevic, but look at this combination. Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner. I had both of those guys as top 8, and I understand they're picking top 8, but like they're really solid prospects. I like both of them. So they get a guard of the future, a forward of the future, along with all the other young pieces that they have in Orlando. I'm a Magic fan. I said this to the buddies I was hanging out with last night during the draft. I'm a Magic fan. I'm going to hop on that bandwagon, and we're gonna throw some money at the Magic and let that money grow as the next 2 to 3 years come. Because oh baby, I'm buying all the stock in the Magic. And then later they traded Jason Preston to the Clippers. They acquired a 2nd round pick and cash. I think it would have been awesome if they got Preston, but again, they already had a guard. And you're ultimately just looking to see what you can get in the future. 2nd round picks are valuable. Maybe not, hugely valuable, but they are valuable. And I think anytime you can get seconds, you can obviously get maybe a bench player for a couple seconds and, whatever. So Orlando, smart move. I like what the Magic did. Philadelphia 76ers. Okay, so they selected Jaden Springer 28th overall. I love Springer. I had him, I think it was like 11th on my board. Holy cow. For him to be able to be at 28, amazing for the Sixers. Amazing. I like him. He's a humble dude. Super athletic, plays good defense, can shoot the ball. I think he's a better shooter than what he showed in college, and was held back a little bit in college as well. I'll talk about him a little bit more later. Filip Petrusev, he played at Gonzaga for a little bit and then went back to Serbia. He's okay, pretty solid. Again, this is the 50 and the 53rd pick, so it's not like I'm gonna tear down the Sixers for this. Springer is solid. 50-53. Charles Bassey, solid picks. But if I was a Sixers fan, man, I would be happy that I got Springer to fall to 28. Phoenix Suns are next. Again, they traded this pick to Brooklyn for Shamet. I like that. Again, you're picking 29th. I don't think Daron Sharp is going to have as much impact as Shamet is this year. So good trade, good move for a team that was only a couple wins away from winning the NBA championship this year. And a solid team that's going to look to try to, advance into the playoffs next year too. So good move for a team that kind of doesn't value that 29th selection. Solid play by Phoenix. Portland. So Portland didn't come in with a draft pick, but they were able to get one. They were able to trade a future 2nd and cash for Greg Brown. Interesting, you always see these little moves where a team will send cash or a team will send a future 2nd to get a guy when they don't even have a pick. Because it's like, obviously, when you don't have a pick going into the draft, you're on the outside looking in. But if you see a guy fall, if Greg Brown is a guy they said is maybe we value as a top 20, 25 guy, and he's at 43, you go try to make a move to get him. You know, again, we can't sit here and say like it's a horrible selection, but I just I think it's okay. You got your guy, you know, at the expense of a second rounder. Not gonna freak out too much there. Nothing earth shattering with it, but nothing to just kind of roll your eyes at. Sacramento. Sacramento's on my losers list, but they're not going to be showing up later in the video, and we'll talk why. So where does Davion Mitchell fit in here? I believe they still have Delon Wright. I might be wrong on that, but Davion Mitchell, when you have Tyrese and De'Aaron Fox on the roster still, I really don't understand that. Now I know that he does provide some defense, and you know, the Kings were horrible on defense this year, but I don't understand like where he plays. Like, dude was selected 9th overall. Like, he's going to play some minutes in the NBA, but where is he going to play? Are you going to throw a 3-guard lineup out there of Halliburton, Fox, and Davion Mitchell? I don't see it. I think this is all up too high to get him, and then the fit doesn't really make sense. So ultimately, I just didn't like that pick for the Kings. It just doesn't make too much sense to me. Name is Keita. Again, watch my videos, second round sleepers the stream that I did where I talked about different sleepers in the second round. Keita was one of them. This is about the range I think he was gonna. I thought he was like going to show up. I probably valued him at like 32 or something, but I think that's what he was on my board. But name is Keita, solid dude. I like him a lot, and you know, a good pick. So they get 2 defensive players. How much they see the floor this year, I don't know. Older players too, by the way. So interesting, just interesting. I don't really get it too much. So let's move on to, let's see who we got. San Antonio. Yeah, San Antonio. Yeah, I got an issue with San Antonio, honestly. I do not understand at all the Josh Primo pick. At all. At 12? Like, can you say confidently? Again, some teams have more intel, or most teams have more intel than I do, but like Joshua Primo, like, were you thinking that somebody was going to take him like within the next 5 picks? Could you not have dropped down and still selected your guy? I have been unimpressed with Popovich a little bit in the last couple Spurs years, just overall. I mean, I don't even want to get into the Team USA stuff where he's, you know, absolutely underperformed as their coach. But Josh Primo, I don't understand this one. Joe Wieskamp, I think the Spurs also passed on Tyrese Halliburton last year. Like, it just, I don't know. Don't you guys have so many guards on the roster? And I know the 41 pick isn't going to be like, oh my gosh, like, you know, we you know, we're going to play the guy that we just selected at 41. Wieskamp's probably a G League dude. But Primo, it's one of the more insane picks, and I'll talk about it later. But San Antonio, yeah, no, I'm not feeling San Antonio. Toronto. So Toronto goes and gets Scotty Barnes at 4, Delano Banton at 46, David Johnson at 47. I like David Johnson actually a lot, and not the football David Johnson. The guard out of Louisville, I just remember I actually had him, and I think at the end of the first. But solid dude. I think he has a role. For him to be dropped to 47, wow, pretty solid selection. I don't know much about Delano Banton, to be honest with you. So yeah, don't have anything to say about that. Scotty Barnes though, yeah, a lot of people thought this was Suggs. I thought Suggs made sense. I'm not like super hurt that it's not Suggs and that it's Barnes. If the Raptors are confident that he can shoot, then awesome. If he doesn't, then you know, maybe a little iffy of a pick. But was Siakam a really good shooter coming into the league out of New Mexico State? I think they like guys who have good length to him. like Anunoby, Chris Boucher, back when they had DeRozan and Kawhi. Toronto likes these long, lanky guys. And I think Scotty Barnes is a good leader. I think it's a solid pick for them. If it was Suggs, I probably would have been a little bit happier, but Barnes isn't like a horrible thing in my opinion. So Toronto does a solid job. The Utah Jazz. So Utah had the 30th pick. They move it to get 2 future second round picks and the 40th pick from Memphis. I am interested about this play by Utah because they were able to have they could have picked Butler at 30 and nobody would have batted an eye. No tears would have come. Like literally nothing. Nobody looks at that and says, oh, that's bad picking Butler at 30. They dropped 10 spots back to pick up 2 future picks as well, and they still get the guy that they were wanting. Awesome. I remember being super high on Butler, and then I realized that he was 6'3" or 6'4", and then I went back up on him a little bit, but then he had like the heart condition, and then I went back down, and then they said that his heart condition was good enough to be playing in the NBA, so I went back up again. So solid pick. Again, they got at 40 that they could have gotten at 30, and they got 2 picks out of it. So good play by the Jazz. Solid selection. I think that's a good thing for them. And if he develops, awesome. If he doesn't, again, you still picked up 2 seconds. Pretty good. And to end the team section of this stream, we are going to talk about the Washington Wizards. They did acquire the rights to Isaiah Todd. I'm a little iffy about Todd. I'm not like super high on him, not super low on him. I think he can be somebody, but I'm like, there's nothing about him that makes me like, oh yeah, great pick or anything like that. The 15th overall pick in Corey Kispert really surprises me. So now, again, keep in mind, and we'll talk about this trade later, the Wizards have moved Westbrook to the Lakers in exchange for, I believe it was the combination of Montrez, Kyle Kuzma, this pick, or the 22nd pick, which turned into Isaiah Jackson. I can't remember who the 22nd pick was. And then they also got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Isaiah Jackson, which was later traded to Indiana from Washington. Yeah. So anyway, Corey Kispert. I guess. I mean, are they just providing depth for the team? He's okay. Wouldn't pick him at 15. Not horrible. Not too excited about it. Just an okay pick. Probably a little less than okay pick for my own taste. Washington's interesting. Westbrook's off the team. It's Beal's team. Is there a way that they can get somebody there? Maybe. But they have depth. They have more depth this year. So very, very interesting for the Wizards. So that ends the team section. We're now going to transition into the guys that I want to talk about, which are the I think I have a list of 3 guys that I think are kind of steals and 3 guys that I think that just shocked me with the picks, and we'll kind of expound on them again. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, feel free to do so. Doing a lot of videos on the NBA offseason, all about the trades and everything. Signings, free agency opens in just a couple of days, so we're getting excited over here about what's going on in the NBA. Super fun time. We'll be covering it all and talking about your favorite team, favorite player, whatever it may be. So join us, subscribe, like the video, comment, tell me where I suck in my analysis, and I'll probably have some passive aggressive comment back towards you. So let's go. Let's look at. Oh man, I lost it. Oh, here it is. All right, so now let's transition over here. So we're gonna be talking about our. We're going to be talking about our guy, Jaden Springer. So Jaden Springer was taken 28th by Philadelphia. Again, watch my videos. I talked about Mr. Springer, about how I thought he was an absolute guy that should have been taken in the lottery. Watched some tape of him at Tennessee, and I think he's a dude that is just outstanding on the defensive end. He can shoot a little bit. He's a solid passer. He moves in a very Kyle Anderson, Malcolm Brogdon way, where it's like he's not like as if he's not super athletic, but then you look at his high school tape, super athletic. The guy jumps out of the gym. Super mellow, super chill kind of a dude. He seems very mature and kind of carries himself in a good way, which is always nice. And I just think Springer's a guy who in Philadelphia, he works. And I'd love Jaden Springer. I think he's a good, solid dude for the 76ers. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about Sharife Cooper. It blew my mind that Cooper went 48th. 48th. Insane. Absolutely insane. Atlanta does a good job. Overall, they get Jalen Johnson and Sharife Cooper, so I was obviously happy with that. Cooper, again, he's a guy who's super athletic, was not a good shooter, was not a good defender, but the dude he just had such high usage in college. Was kind of was a guy who was getting so many assists in the SEC, and was also able to get to the free throw line a lot. And I don't think I mentioned that in the video that I talked about him, where he was kind of a hidden gem in my opinion. I had him at like top 15 and he goes at 48. Insane. He's a guy you definitely should catch in a Atlanta Hawks game for the summer league, because he's must-see TV. I feel like he'll have a highlight, whether it be a dunk, or a very sick pass. Like he is a fantastic young point guard who I think in the future, as far as his NBA career goes, I think he's a guy who can come off the bench, provide energy as a backup point guard. Last for my steals again was Keon Johnson. So Keon Johnson was traded from New York to the Clippers. Dude plays defense. Dude is athletic. I think he can improve his jumper a little bit. If he does get a little bit more of a jump shot, watch out. I think he's a super, super good pick for the Clippers. They didn't give up too much to get him. And Keon Johnson, I just think he's a immediate contributor to a Clippers team that might have less depth next year because they could potentially lose Batum and Reggie Jackson. So I like Keon Johnson, guy who a lot of people thought was going to be taken top 10, is taken at 21. Value, man. That's great value. All right, so now we're going to transition and talk about our shocks. Guys who I thought were taken a little too high and were ultimately kind of I wasn't so fond of. So Kuminga, here's our first guy with Golden State. I didn't think he should. I thought Golden State could have taken him at 14, but they pick him at 7. I thought like Moses Moody and Kuminga picks could have easily been swapped. Like Moody could have been taken at 7 and 14. Like that would have been okay with me, and they probably don't end up on this list as far as being shocks. But Kuminga being at 7, look, he struggled with shot selection in the G League. I think he averaged like 9 threes a game, and he wasn't hitting them at like a super high rate. So you kind of wonder like how is his IQ as a player? You wonder about, again, shot selection. I don't think he provides too much elsewhere. Like he's not a great rebounder. He's not a great super great defender. I think there's potential for him to be a good defender. Not a good passer as far as assist rate goes. So yeah, really weird. I wasn't crazy about the Kuminga pick for Golden State. Let's move on to our next guy, who is Davion. No. Josh Primo. Josh Primo, yeah. Man, I gotta get on my soapbox for this, man. Josh Primo was a huge reach. Who else was gonna take him? Who else was gonna take Josh Primo? The Spurs, I am shocked that they made that move. Absolutely shocked. I had Primo as a second rounder. And for them to take him at 12 is just crazy to me. Crazy. Cannot stress enough. Do I think he can play in the league? Yeah. Do I think he has a whole lot of upside? Not really. And I'm surprised the Spurs in the past, who have got guys like DeJounte Murray, who've got guys like Derek White and Devin Vassell last year, and Lonnie Walker, and like other guys, Keldon Johnson. Maybe they see something here, and maybe we're here in a year and we say, man, Primo was a really good pick. But as of right now, I just think it was too high. I don't know what team would have taken him if the Spurs didn't. Last one on the list here is Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell was taken at 9 by Sacramento. What? Again, I talked a little bit about it just here a minute ago about the Kings. I don't understand the whole... Okay, so we're going to be a better defensive team next year, so we're going to bring an older guard who peaked in his last year of college. And, like, that supposedly is going to translate to the league. Now, again, I think he'll play good defense in the league, but we have years of tape for his first couple of years at Baylor or in college where he wasn't shooting the ball great, and this year he explodes shooting the ball right. The team goes on a national championship run, and so maybe that boosts his stock a little bit more. But I don't see him being a good fit at 9 to the Kings. Again, if we just wipe away the Kings and say he was picked 9, that's still a little bit of a reach. But then you find out, well, Sacramento, and they already have 2 guards. Where is that top? You drafted a guard, top 10. You're telling what you tell us again. A lot of people need to like get this figured out with kind of NBA or just any front office anywhere. A business is going to tell you what they're trying to do based on their actions. Actions speak louder than words. So why in the world would you try to go get a guard when you already have 2 dynamic guards of the future? So who's playing less minutes next year then? Probably Davion. And if you're taking Davion at 9, you're basically saying we want to try to play him a lot. I don't know. I don't know about Sacramento, man. Like, I'm a little disappointed in them. A little disappointed. They didn't get that Buddy Hield deal done. Now again, maybe that's because the Lakers knew that they were going to get Westbrook or could get Westbrook. So that one's a little weird, but yeah, I'm not crazy about what Sacramento did there at 9 with Davion Mitchell. Okay, so now I'm going to transition to talk about our winners. Got teams that I thought were winners. Now again, we're providing timestamps so you can kind of go back and listen to some teams. But let's quickly talk about winners of the draft last night. These are my 6 teams that I kind of picked out: Houston, Atlanta, Oklahoma City, the Clippers, the Grizzlies, and the Magic. Again, I'll talk about them a little bit more at length right now, and then next we'll talk about our losers. So let's start with Atlanta again. Jalen Johnson, Sharif Cooper, just a dynamic duo. To get Cooper as late as they did was awesome. To get Jalen Johnson at a point where some people thought that was a good spot for him, but I personally think he's a guy who's top 5 talent in the draft. If you watch my top 5 prospects in the NBA draft, he was number 5 after kind of the consensus of 4. I had him ahead of Scotty Barnes. Atlanta, I think, did a really good job here, in my personal opinion. And again, teams that make the playoffs and then go into the draft and like make moves and like are able to do things, hats off to them. Hats absolutely off to them. Let's go to Houston next. And talk about them. Houston again, Jalen Green, Usman Garuba, Josh Christopher. I think that they did pretty good. They get Alperen Sengun. Again, if he is a hit, awesome. I know you did sacrifice 2 first-round picks for it, but again, what do? You got your guy. Jalen Green, I think, is a guy who could potentially be the guy in the draft that we look back and, you know, in the future, in 5 years, we look back and say Green was the best player in the draft. And, you know, Cunningham wasn't. So I think Houston did good for what they were given. Next, we'll talk about the Clippers. Again, the Keon Johnson trade. Wow. Unbelievable. New York, I don't know what New York was doing there to just trade for Grimes and a second rounder and then pass on Keon Johnson. Weird. Definitely weird. I've definitely flipped on my Keon Johnson opinion. The Clippers did a great job there. They also got Jason Preston from Orlando in exchange for cash and a second round pick. So yeah, I liked what the Clippers did. I think they get two solid guards. And again, maybe they both do pretty good in the NBA. Maybe they both do maybe they both stink. But I think one of them has the potential, more so Keon Johnson, to be way better than where his draft position was. Oklahoma City next. Again, Josh Giddey, Trey Mann. They make a trade to get 2 future firsts for Alperen Sengun. I love that they just continuously get draft picks. They also acquired Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who I wasn't super high on, but and they traded away Miles McBride, but ultimately Giddey, sticking to your guns, because I think a lot of people would have been like, oh, James Bouknight here, like the rumors were saying, and people would have been okay with that. But the fact that they were able to get Giddey and be they're confident with, hey, it's Giddey. Giddey is our guy. So I'm super excited about the Thunder and what they did. I think they were winners of the draft. One of the few winners that I have here. And then I have the Orlando Magic next to talk about 2 good picks. Like Atlanta had the 2 good picks. The Clippers had the 2 good picks where they got their 2 guys. But the Magic, man, Suggs and Franz Wagner, that is a killer. Super good position for them. And I believe I mentioned in the Magic stream that I did for their offseason preview is that the fact that they had 5 and 8, like, yeah, they probably weren't going to be able to go get the stars, Cunningham, Green, or Evan Mobley. But the fact that they were able to get 2 really solid players that I valued high, I think they hit it out of the ballpark with those 2 guys. They did trade away Preston as well to get a future second round pick in 2026 and cash. So solid for Orlando. Thought they did good. And then last on our list here is Memphis. Trey Murphy was later traded to Orlando or to New Orleans for that whole Grizzlies Pelicans trade with Valanciunas and Bledsoe with Adams. So they end up getting Zaire Williams. Look, I'm not crazy about Zaire Williams, but I think based on like the whole taking everything into context, them just being able to get 10 in the first place, solid. Get their guy. The Santi Aldama pick was kind of weird, but then I also like BJ Boston for his value at 51. So Memphis does a good job as well. So these are my 6 guys I'm going to say are winners. I don't really like handing out grades for drafts just because we don't know what these picks are going to be. We don't know if they could potentially be traded and peak somewhere else with a different franchise. But ultimately, I do like these 6 teams and what they did in the draft. I mentioned earlier with other teams, you can go back and watch them, that other teams did pretty good as well that aren't here. But these are kind of the 6 that I like to choose. Next on my losers list. Let's talk about the losers here now. 3 teams stuck out to me. Detroit, let me address kind of the elephant here in the room. So Detroit, yes, you got Cade Cunningham. I wasn't crazy about what else they did. Now, they're not the most egregious, but I kind of wanted to just throw them up here because I wanted to discuss, yes, you selected Cade Cunningham, but at the same time, I wasn't crazy about trading away JT Thor and I understand why they traded that 37th pick and got 57 back from Charlotte and also gave up Mason Plumlee. I think they're trying to just get off Plumlee's money, but then they didn't even really address the center position for Detroit. So Thor goes to Charlotte, and they get Balsa Cabricia, I don't know how to say his name, 57. And then the Isaiah Livers pick and the Luka Garza pick. Look, I was just really weirded out by that a lot. Again, better guys are on the board. Surprised with Garza and Livers, who I actually had both of them not even really being drafted. So surprising. Again, you made the easy decision with Cade Cunningham. However, there were rumors about them trying to move down. And will they regret not moving down in years to come when maybe they could have traded down 1 spot or 2 spots to get Mobley or Green? This is TBD, but I'm not crazy what they did in the second round. The more egregious one is Charlotte. Again, I didn't like how they picked Bouknight. Go look at the history of what Charlotte does. They just pick the good college basketball player from a well-known school. Most of the time, that's what they're doing. So yeah, I did not like the James Bouknight pick. They also acquired Kai Jones, who what Kai Jones, and you had to give up a future first, a protected first. What? I don't understand that one. And then they also got JT Thor, who I'm kind of like on. So like, if I'm a Hornets fan, those three guys of Jones, Thor, and Bouknight, I just don't feel like that's a good walk away. You walk away with these three guys and you're happy about it. I'm not happy about that if I'm a Hornets fan. The San Antonio Spurs are next, and the final team that I'll talk about. Again, I've already talked about Joshua Primo. I don't understand it at all. Maybe he hits. Maybe I just think it's more likely he doesn't hit. I don't think he returns top 12 pick value in return. Right? So like when we're tiering out the draft, and when people do like redrafts, they always put the all-stars up ahead, right? Obviously. And then they give after 10 is like the serviceable players that are near all-stars or whatever it may be, depending on how the quality of the draft is. I don't know why Primo is the pick here. I think he's got a pretty low ceiling and a pretty low floor, or a pretty low ceiling and a low floor. So I don't know what the pick is there with Primo. And then Wieskamp was a guy I kind of had late in the second round and borderline undrafted. He goes at 41. Okay, I guess. Shooting definitely means stuff in the league, but I don't know. Better players were available on the board. So those are my winners and losers of the draft. Again, these are my losers right here in front of me. If you can see right here. Yeah, right here. These are all my losers. There we go. So that will end the stream. I am going to make a stream in here in just a moment and discuss the Westbrook to the Lakers trade. Discuss it a little bit more at length and go from there. But yeah, again, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Making videos like this all the time and trying to get more videos out for the off season and trying to stay up to date with the NBA. So again, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment, tell me where I'm wrong, tell me how the Spurs made the right pick or whatever it may be. And other than that, that's